Hi everyone, how are you? I'm not used to this. I'll eventually get used to YouTube. Hope that you're well. Good to see you all, and I hope that I'm able to connect with you here, which has been really good. I put out some notifications I was coming in, and I know some of you have um, subscribed. Thank you for subscribing. That's like incredibly cool. And I'm just baby, at that 6:34. So if you can share it if this resonates with you, and of course join, and you'll get to be able to see more and more of what I do. So I was deplatformed a couple of weeks ago, and it's been really interesting. They say that you're good when you're hovering over the target. Then if they're triggered and you get shot down, then you must be doing something right. So that's a great way to feel. If you've just joined me, hello and welcome. Nice to see you all. And if you want to just say good day in the chat, that would be cool. And we can talk and connect, and I can find out where you're from. Loads of people all over the world. So nice to see you all. Am I missing Facebook? It was the question earlier. And no, actually, I am not missing it one little bit. I am not missing any aspect of that what has become known as crackbook, and where I felt that I needed to be there for whatever reason, I no longer feel that way. So that's feeling pretty good for me. And then Twitter, and of course I avoided Twitter. I enrolled, whatever you do, registered for Twitter, right? And never went back again. And that was 2009. And I went back for the first time ever last year in May. And then I made a comment on Trump's page saying how grateful I was that I'd been doing the truth for a really long time. And I could not believe my eyes. I was a Trump hater. So for those of you that are hating on Trump, there's hope for you yet. And for those of you that love him, sorry, I didn't get it. And I said this today, actually, I just didn't get it. What am I missing? And of course, I discovered what I was missing last year on the 31st of March, where I had learned for the first time about the children who were under New York Central Park. I just knew in my bones, I just knew that this was the truth. A lot of people around me did not accept that the children were in, that, there was such a thing as children being caught underground. I know a lot of people who still don't believe it. Why would the government let that happen? Why wasn't it all over the news? I'm sure you understand how that goes. As if this would be known, everybody would know all about it, et cetera, were the excuses that I was getting. But I knew in my heart, I know how truth works, and I knew deep down, just something just caught the vibration, and I just went, I'm going straight, and I was like, so how come I don't know anything about this immediately? And yeah, I'll never forget this. I had to go and find out straight away what it was about and where it was. I tried to look at the media, and then I realized, wait, no, they're not going to show the truth. Oh, no, I need to go to the White House. So I went straight to the White House, and he had a press conference, because these press conferences appear to happen every Sunday, and on our terms. And I always thought how weird it was. I now know why the press conferences are on Sundays. Went straight there, and I remember the children, their souls, asked me to watch him, and I was having this inner turmoil, this inner conflict, and they said, we'll take you where you can see him, but you need to see him with your heart. I'll never forget it. We'll take him to see him, but you need to see him with you. I thought, oh, okay, nothing to, okay, show me. And I don't know who those children were. It was just the collective, right? I went straight there, and I could see that Trump had Archangel Uriel over him. And I was not a Trump fan at all. I didn't get it. I'm the first to admit it. I didn't get it. So that was my beginning into this round of truth, because I'd already been following the truth for many years, and I walked away in 2015. I was just like, I got to the point where there were about where we are now. So I got to the point where religion is a lie, and where the people, elite people around the world just eat children. And I got to off-world intelligence controlling entities that were both living, breathing, and energetic to worship their gods. I got that far, and I just went, why am I being shown this? This was back in 2012. And after months, probably, I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7 months, longer than that. No, it would have been over a year. As I was recovering from my first trip to Egypt, the attempt was to write a book. So I meant to write a book, and I decided to go and understand a little bit more about all of these messages and things that I was getting from Egypt when I went there. So I had an unplanned trip to Egypt, and yeah, I didn't understand a lot of it. And as I started to unravel and research and start to get to know Egypt, what it was about, where it was going and how it was going, and what I saw, and they were all biblical aspects to Egypt in retrospect, but at the time I didn't realize. And as I was uncovering this, it's not hard. I mean, you basically go from the myths and the legends of Egypt, misunderstandings of the cultures, the lies that are perpetrated by the Egyptologist community that are governed by a fraternity that decide what's said, and the truth is suppressed. So I was very much into, and still am, I take tours to Egypt. If we didn't have all this going on, I would have a tour to Egypt. And my tours are all about how information has been suppressed and we've been denied access to the proper truth. And then the Egyptologists speak only and can only speak about the truth. They're not allowed to go off the narrative. And then you see, how innovation is stifled and how real discoveries are stymied to one outcome, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then as that unfolded, I started to get into the geopolitics, because I wanted to know what was actually made them. I made the question while I was in Egypt, can you please explain to me the Palestinian-Israel thing? Seeing we'd made friends on everything else. And they said, oh yeah, well, the Palestinians are the native title. What? Oh my God, they're like the Aboriginals. They went, yes. Oh my God. So I saw it all. That's a very reduced version of the conversation we had, which actually went for an hour and a half. And I was like, they're marginalized. And they're like, yes. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so bad. Yes. And we all love, the Egyptians said to me, we all love Palestine. They're our cousins, they're our brothers and sisters. And, Israel is this terrible thing to this area, and et cetera, and America. And then it all sort of unraveled. And so, yeah, this was in 2012, 10 years after I saw 9/11. So I've been reflecting with some people today, actually. It was really triggering. And there isn't a day where I don't cry. Not one day. Heartfelt tears. And feeling remorse and sorry for a lot of people that are going through so much. A lot of the people who are understanding the truth for the first. I took a poll in my group, and I don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was God. and I just needed to know who my audience was and who I was speaking with. And I was like, so how long have you been awake? A week, a month, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? The majority of people in my group have only been awake 12 months in their terms, the way that they answered the poll. There are other ways to define awake, but for their understanding of awake, 12 months. And or less, 6 months, 3 months. You know, some people were saying, well, I only woke up when Trump lost the election, then I could fully see, you know. Other people saying, well, yeah, I woke up when I heard about the kids and the whole 9 yards. So yeah, it's been big, and going through this dawn of awakening, or this period of awareness, has been really hard on a lot of people. You know, they have been working their hardest to try and come to grips with all of this stuff that I was already aware of, you know, way back in 9/11. I watched 9/11 awake. I knew what was going on. Not at you know, I didn't have the view that I've got now. I didn't develop that understanding, probably the deepest of understanding, until it was around 2010. But yeah, I was fully, like, I knew that Bush was lying, and I knew that it was an Israeli jet. So well done me. A message that I got from God. And of course that's CGI. I knew that a building, I'm not an engineer. Let's just make that really clear, right? But I knew that a building would tip or break, that a building would implode. I was an owner builder at the time, and I understand dynamics and a little bit about physics. Not that I ever studied it much, but I do understand how buildings are made. And there was no way, from my point of view, that a building could. Why does the building do that? What? And then what about that other building down the road? You know, and I've shared that with you before. And my dad saying, well, the ground was so unstable. And I'm like, Dad, there's like 3 blocks. I mean, I don't even get it. You've been there. I have not. How did that happen? And he's like, don't know. I think he actually answered, God works in mysterious ways, and some things we'll never find the truth to. I think he said something to that effect, actually. I was in shock, like everybody. But I was in shock knowing full well that it was a plot, and a very nasty one. And then the next day getting the paper, because it's what you did, reading, and I've shared this with you before, reading the paper and going, wait, how can they know all this information the next day? Oh my God, this is lies. This was ready to print, you know, because I used to work in the advertising agencies. So I know you can't, despite us believing otherwise, and how newspapers just magically printed the stuff the night before, that everything was printed in advance. That's how they were able to do it. And it wasn't this magical piece of tablet that appeared, you know, at diligence and toil and trouble. I don't think we've ever seen a newspaper that wasn't planned well and truly in advance. I know what goes into it. So that fully confirmed things for me. And then when we saw, you know, the war on terror, and we saw, you know, Bush and Major and all of the players stake their claims on what they were going to do, and whipping up the sentiment for war. I was watching a whole lot, just shaking my head going, you guys are evil as. And I remember, if I ever met any of them, I would spit, just repulse. And when that shoe hit Bush Jr., oh my God, it was the best day ever, because everybody was up in arms, and I'm like, yes, this is so good, because somebody, you know, had his number and knew what was going on. And then eventually, you know, people woke up, and it was the engineers, and then a lot of the behaviour after 9/11 seemed very unnatural in a lot of ways, interfering with the site the way that they did, getting rid of every piece of evidence, and then finding, of all things, they didn't even find a telephone that wasn't pulverized to dust. They didn't find a filing cabinet that wasn't pulverized to dust, but they managed to find somebody's Muslim passport. You could see that it was all planned. We all know that now. We all understand that now. So, yeah, it's been big. But today, what I want to talk to you about is what came up in my heart that I wanted to explain to you, is that God really is the fast lane express to the fifth dimension. I'm going to be talking a lot about this going forward. It's something that, especially those of us in the spiritual community who feel aligned to the truth, and we feel aligned to what's really going on for us. And one of the things that has become abundantly obvious to me is the exquisite way in which God works, the way in which everything aligns perfectly. And I know I've spoken to heaps of people, and me too, where nearly every step, every thought, every moment of your life recently seems to have pointed to these moments, seems to have brought you into this reality and starting to see the bigger picture, see how things unfold and the reasons why things unfold. Now suddenly there's complete things that may not have made any sense to you. It suddenly feels like your life was tailor-made or customized just for this. And that's why so many of us are loving this really magnificent journey of awakening. We're on this incredible path to awakening. In terms of the fifth dimension, look, it's become jargon and it's a little irritating. So I tend to step back from jargon because I think it loses people. But it also is something that many of us are aspiring to. This is where we move away from the 3D reality. We move away from what used to sustain us, okay? And that there's before Q for some of you and after Q, or there's before T for some of us, or after T being truth, or before God or after God, or before Jesus or after Jesus, okay? So you're in this mode of, this is what used to sustain me. These are the things that I used to find incredible joy in, and now I don't really cut it anymore because I've shifted, or I've moved into this different way of thinking and seeing things. Now, I will say one thing, and that is this: if you take nothing else away from what I'm saying today, just remember this part. I will say that truth can rob you of joy and happiness. And there's a saying, ignorance is bliss, right? And it is true to some extent, because I look at myself sometimes and I think, wow, I was never really a firecracker, but I have not changed in terms of the way that I look at the world and asking why. Ask my mother from when she was still around. She would tell you. She never shut up. She never stopped asking questions. She was just always wanting to know. And that is my Chinese birth sign. I'm a monkey. They're very, very inquisitive. They want to know everything. They're in and out of everything. And they want to find out how it works and why does it happen? Why have we always got to do it this way? And as I was growing up, why do we always have to have the presents at Christmas this way? Why don't we just relax? Lots. Ask my mom, right? I was very much into the why. So and as we God says, seek and you shall understand. It's in the Bible. If you ask the question, I will show you the answer. If you keep digging, you are going to find stuff. If you're looking for it, you will find it. Full stop. End of story. And that is the thing about the truth. where when we're working with the truth, sometimes it can be a little extreme, and like finding out that Santa doesn't exist anymore. It can be a little bit boring around Christmas time. It's sort of fun when the kids really hold that image of Santa. And I'm saying that with tongue in cheek, because actually that was the biggest lie I ever told my children, and was also the most difficult lie. I didn't want to lie to my kids, but I also felt like a terrible mother if I didn't give them the experience of Christmas. If I had my time over again, I would not have done that, but that's where I was. And I didn't want to, my feeling was I didn't want to impose my values on my kids. I wanted my kids to have their own set of values, and by not confusing them too much or ostracizing them from society, which would be worse in my book, best to just go with the party line. But it was pretty tough to being who I am and lie about Santa to the kids. But my point is, when you know the truth, it can rob you of joy, and then you've got to look for other things. You've got to try and find the joy in the simple things. It can be easy, it can be difficult. So what I've found is God is the fast lane express to 5D. A lot of us wanting to look to solutions, spending. This is the thing, okay? Spending many tens of thousands. The spiritual industry has become this $1 trillion phenomenon, well, billions and billions anyway. And as this industry has stacked itself, okay, it's built a lot of people up. It creates a lot of money, and there's a whole lot of false hope, and there's a lot of false promise. I know, because I've seen it. We're only seeing now the implications of the people like, for example, the elite that are involved in all that's going on with the sex trafficking. When we're looking at people like the Dalai Lama under question, John of God, who's been dethroned, thank God. You have to ask yourself, why would somebody call themselves John of God? That had alarm bells all over it for me, but not everybody feels that way. I get it. And you get to a point where you start to see these gurus creating at the top of these white towers, creating these impossible things. They're extracting thousands of dollars. I knew many men here in Byron Bay that were fleecing single women like you wouldn't believe. One in particular, I'm not going to drop names, asking people for $15,000, where basically he was sexually molesting them. And if you know who I'm talking about, you know who I'm talking about. Please don't put it on the chat. Thanks. Got away with it. God sees all, but got away with it. And these are people that are vulnerable. Often, a lot of the time, people have escaped the clutches of religion. Now, I speak with a little bit of inner knowing what that is. I was raised by my mum, who was spiritually abused all her life as a child, fully through the churches. Okay, and she was a huge, I wouldn't say hater of, she just flat out don't go into any religion. she just, no way. Okay, so in the end, she ended up joining my dad at Mass and things. I was raised Roman Catholic, but I renounced my own faith at age 11. I was actually wandering through the bush by myself at a school camp, and we had spare time, and we could use that time the way that we wanted. And I went off walking along a path, and I found this bush chapel. It was specifically made in a Baden Powell camp. I'm sure he was a sexual molester because he gives me the creeps. But I remember going in there and feeling the sanctity of the trees, the grass, and the little bush benches that had been made by some handyman, and how sacred and how beautiful it was. I was 11. And I remember feeling really touched by God and becoming really dismayed, going, why Why do we have churches when we can have this? Why aren't all churches like this? I don't like my religion. I said to myself, it was clearly God speaking to me, but I wouldn't have known that then. I don't want to be part of that. So at 11, I mentally divorced myself, but I would continue to be raised in a Catholic way, just very skeptical until I was 16. The day I left school, whipped off my uniform, chucked it in the bin, in the kitchen, nothing on, and said to my mum, don't ever make me go back to that school or the church or the chapel ever again. She said, no, I will never do that. So that was my experience with God. And the growing up, and the most incredible thing was that over the years that those experiences ended up shaping me, and what they did make us do, pretty progressive for a Catholic girls' school. We weren't allowed to leave senior until we had done comparative religions on 4 studies. Now, I dare say the agenda was very different to the outcome. So we had to, I'll explain in a sec. So we had to study Hinduism, Judaism, Islam. Is that them all? Buddhism, okay, 4. And then the last 2 semesters, we had to compare and contrast what we discovered in the last semester previous before we could get out of jail free. If we didn't do that, we didn't get our senior certificate. Nothing to do with maths or nothing to do with physics or all the really hard subjects. No. The senior certificate is the thing that you need, and this is what we needed to do to get out of jail. Most progressive thing ever, because it inspired a love of religion, religious studies, comparative studies. And I was able to see very clearly, because of the way I think, I was able to see very clearly, oh, okay, so this is similar, that's not. This is similar, that's not. And as I went through these comparative studies, I started to realize, wait a minute, how come that's similar and this is similar, but there's one element of this religion missing, and that's over here. And they don't believe in this and they don't believe in that, but these guys over here believe in that. Well, if you put that and that together, it would be the perfect belief system. And I realized I was 16 years old. So I realized at 16, my God, this is a conspiracy against us. Now, did I realize this, or did God show me this? God showed me, right? And as I grew, I started to understand this more and more. So after I went to Egypt, came back and started to do the research when I was recovering from my illness, then I started to put the dots together, go back to what I learned at school, came back and started to understand, oh my God, these 3 religions have been designed in a way that they can never be friends, because at a philosophical level, there's nothing there, right? They're never going to see eye to eye. And I've spent a lot of time with Jewish friends, spent a lot of time with Muslim friends, loads of them. I love them as dearly as people. Of course, I have Catholic and religion friends, and Christian friends, I should say, in different religions. And I can honor and respect those people as people. But as far as religion goes, no. So what has that got to do with the 5th dimension? Well, God is everything. The ironic thing is, God never wanted, and in fact, Jesus never wanted a church to be built in his name. The Catholic Bible was changed to indicate this was his dying wish. No, that is not true. Okay, and in my last trip to Egypt in 2019, I was speaking with God about something very personal and dear to me. And he said to me, why would you consider that? I was thinking he's like my mentor and my guide. And I was like, I want to be close to you. And he said, you don't need that to be close. You don't need anything to be close to me. You're already close to me. Why would you go down that path thinking that this would be better when you already have me? And I was like, oh, thank God, nearly made the biggest mistake of my life. Or was going to go back into an old pattern. And he actually said, I was standing in the lounge room in Egypt, in Cairo, was standing in the lounge room, and he actually said, "Why would you send yourself backwards when you spent thousands of years trying to find me?" Good point. So, and what have I discovered? Well, as I've gone through this 10 years of self-discovery, 10 years of working through spiritual aspects of my life, wanting to be closer to God, getting into all of the meditations and the yogas, and getting into all the thinking and the study, for want of a better term, not really study, but reading, and I was so passionate about moving into the next dimension and escaping the 3D, because it's not for me on any level. What did I learn? That as I've come closer and closer to God through my own journey of awakening, and if you're going to look at truth, you can't do the truth without God. The two, they're the same. Okay, God is in the detail, not the devil, when it comes to the truth. The devil can't be anywhere near it. He's allergic to it. If you want the real truth, he's allergic to it. Okay, Satan, people say devil is in the detail. Yeah, for things that are not true. Okay, but the things that are the truth, it's all God. God's there. He's looking after you, and he's making sure that everything's okay. And that fast track to 5D that everybody's talking about and thinking about and worried they'll be left behind. Well, if you have a relationship with God, you've got everything. And what has been really interesting is I've been able to reconcile, and many of you know, if you've been following me for a while, you know how I feel, A, about religion, and B, I was very wounded around the Bible. Okay, and if you haven't been raised Catholic, this will be very hard for you to understand. So I don't mean to be blasphemous or negative in any way, other than to say that my skepticism came from my entire upbringing, and not just mine, my mother's. Mum was beaten black and blue, abused sexually, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. She was exorcised, demonized. Most of us would not understand what my mother went through. I didn't hear half of it. She couldn't speak about it because of the abuse, spiritual abuse that she went through. And of course, then I come up, I'm going, see you later to Catholicism. And Mum was like, yeah, okay. I didn't. And actually, in the end, she said to me 2 days before she died, I never wanted you to be Catholic. What? Mum, what? Why didn't you fight? She said, because your father wanted differently, and his father, they all decided, but Nana's Protestant, Mum. She goes, I know, and your grandmother didn't want you to be Catholic either. But we decided it was just a whole lot easier, and we went with Catholic. So, that religious skepticism that I have about anything that isn't pure and isn't the truth is built in my DNA. Okay, it's right there, and it's constantly at me. And many of you will have heard me say, no, I don't trust the Bible. Why? Because I was given a Bible that was amended many, many times. I never had access to a Bible that wasn't amended. I have since been able to obtain a beautifully collated copy of a Bible, which I'll share with you in email in the coming weeks and days. Sign up for my email, and I'll be sharing that with you, okay? Because I think everybody deserves that, knowing that this was the truth. What I've also come to understand this week, especially speaking with dear friends and mentors, guides, and talking about this openly, the one thing I will say is, yes, there are lost texts, which I'm also really passionate about. If you know anything about the Nicene Council, look it up, 330 AD, Constantinople brought together his pals. Okay, they sat around a table and they just went, let's rip that out, let's rip this out, let's put this together, let's take this out. any of us who have any connection to that period of life and ancient history and were affected by the Alexandria Library, knowing what the agenda of Constantinople was. Did I say Constantinople? I meant Constantine. So 330 AD, Constantine pulled together this hierarchy of thought leaders, and they decided how this Bible was going to look. And they ripped this out, they ripped that out. Just even talking about it breaks my heart. However, I'd come to the realization through God's love that the Bible that we've been left with is the perfect tool to help us for right now. And that as much as whatever they did was satanic and whatever they did was brutally against the truth, they can go up against God, but they can never win. And what I've started to see is that God kept the intact, the purest and the truest form of the Bible that we have, minus those texts. It's still its purest form. And how do I know this to be true? Because I've tested it. Doing the truth is tough going. And as I said, the truth and God are one and the same. When you go through these revelations that we're all experiencing right now, we're starting to see the world as it really is and not as the world that we would like to have. We've started, ignorance is bliss, but it's not necessarily the place that we want to stay. We don't really want to be ignorant. And God, when we're ready, God opens our hearts and our eyes and says, okay, scales away, time to fly. You have to look at this and understand this, and it can transform you. This kind of truth breaks your heart many, many times. There is not a day where I have been doing the truth and I don't weep many, many, many tears. And the thing that has helped me the most has been the Bible and God's words, specifically the book of John, the book of Isaiah, the book of Revelations, Genesis, and a little of Job and some Acts. Those have been really incredible. What I find, you may find it also, that the Bible itself was too much. And actually, what I discovered was the reason it was too much is because it's not written in 3D. It's written in 5D language. And if it's been a while since you went and consulted your Bible, go back and look at it with the new eyes after you've been revealed the truth, and you will see for yourself. It's quite a miracle. You will actually see for yourself that the Bible is easier to digest because you've grown. Now, this was written 2,000 years ago, and in some cases 1,500. Okay, some of the books were added later and minus and subtracted, and if you look up how many times the Bible has been amended, it's pretty scary. But what are they trying to do? They're trying to cover up the truth. They're trying to change the truth. The Catholic religion has its own set of commandments. Like, what is that? They just changed it. They shifted it from 10 commandments into this other set. Oh, well, we're not going to do that now. We're going to go over here. What? Okay, and what have we discovered? Well, Catholic faith is based on satanic principles. Sorry about that, but that's the truth. I've known about this since 2010. And once seen, never unseen. There's some pretty vulgar references in it actually, but one of the worst things is where they say to you, don't worship idols. Okay. And what have we got? Figurines all around the church. Creepy ones, or ugly ones, or beautiful ones. Mary's beautiful, except she looks like a vulva. Okay, and we're actually worshipping vulva. So this hard, cold facts can be very difficult to look at, and their whole agenda has been to turn us away from God. That's all they care about. any way they can bamboozle you and weave you into doubt, which that was definitely me, full doubt, then they've won. Okay, turning you away from God is their agenda. It's what they want to achieve. Oh, I would go as far as to say, and I can't remember if I heard this or I thought this myself, because it gets like that, because we're watching everything and we're connecting with everything, but I would go as far as to say is their whole success model is to confuse you and have you at a point where I was, which is baby in bathwater, throw the whole lot out. Except God. I was always close to God. That he always made sure that I was within cooey, and he always let me go and cooey. It's very Australian, sorry. Always within reach. He gave me lots of rope, and I would always go back to him and ask him questions ever since I was small. So at least I had that. I didn't do things by myself. I rejected everything in the middle. Everything. It was all story. As far as I was concerned, all of it was story. Until my Muslim friends insisted in 2016 that I needed to go and see Old Cairo and see where Jesus was raised. I'm like, I don't need to go there. They're like, no, you're going to have to go. And I'm like, I don't want to go. I don't believe in any of that. But you have to go. I'm like, I don't have to do anything. And they're like, come on, we'll go. And if you don't like it, we'll never have to go back again. They're very, very hard to say no to. I'm like, it's a bit like pushing away seconds for an Italian mama. You know, when they get an idea in their head, I'm like, right, okay, we'll go, but just to shut you up. And they went, yep, just one time, PJ, just go. Just come with us. You'll love it. I'm like, okay, off we go. Yay. So we ended up going. And it's funny how that came about, because I had a tour schedule in Egypt, and the reason we went was actually a miracle. I've had many miracles occur in my life, many miracles, amazing. And this was one of them. And I had already said no to the itinerary being changed to Old Cairo. They kept insisting. Anyway, there was this big dust storm, which doesn't sound like much, but the dust storms are so bad there that they can impact weather and flights and the whole 9 yards, right? It's a big deal. And we had 2 days of dust storm. The first day we could operate, the second day we couldn't operate at all. We were on the ship in a luxury yacht on the Nile. Sounds glamorous. It's pretty amazing. Done that many, many times. And we had to anchor. We weren't allowed to go anywhere. We couldn't do anything because of the red. And we had to sit down and look at the itinerary. He said, PJ, I need to sit with you. And I went, sure. So now we've got a problem. What's that? We have to fill a whole day. I'm like, oh. After we spent a whole 2 days designing this itinerary, he's going, I know. Oh dear. What are we going to do? How are we going to fill a day? I've got a paying guests with me. They're going to get shitty if we don't do something. And he's like, well, we have to go to Old Cairo. I'm like, oh, no. It's not a religious tour. I don't want, no. He's like, PJ, we have to go. No. You must go. If you go and you don't like it, then fine. But you haven't even been. And I'm like, oh, okay, now you're making sense. Can we not say that it's Jesus's where he raised me? We don't know that for sure, because I'm a researcher. And I went down all kinds of rabbit holes. And I was like, at that point of, you know, was the man, is it a thing? I'm like, he's like, just come. And if it's not the truth, then you will know anyway. Or you of all people will know if it's the truth. I went, well, that's the truth. Okay, we'll go. I'll honor you. You're going to love it. You're going to, okay. We went down there. We went to Old Cairo. My skeptic brain was like, oh, this is going to be embarrassing if it ends up being just a tourist trap. I don't want it. Is it even in the Bible? I don't know. And sure enough, we went along and I started to feel the energy shift in the middle of old Cairo. It's very clean and they look after it beautifully, and it felt 2,500, 3,000, 4,000 years old. Like it just felt old. And I'm like, wow, this is like the real thing. He's like, I told you. And I'm like, I know. Geez, this is pretty special. We kept walking and I'm like, oh, this is amazing. And he went, thank you. And I said, okay. We kept going. They kept explaining and describing things to us as we went through Old Cairo. We went to the place called a synagogue. Now, what is interesting is there's a synagogue, a Catholic church or Christian church, Coptic, and very similar to Catholic, and but it's the original Christianity, and a mosque, and they're all together. And that's not recent. That's like, and they didn't just turn a building into a mosque. They don't do that. They're all side by side, and the truth was right there. And I said, what? And he goes, as you can see, they all live side by side happily. It was only later when we were told that they fought for thousands of years. They didn't. Cairo was a religious center to be revered, and they always gave each other tolerance and respect for whatever faith, as long as they were following God. That was really all that mattered. That's what was shared with us there. And I went, oh, fair enough. So we went along to where Jesus was raised, in a basement with Mary and Joseph. So he would have been around 8, I think. I've got that right. It was either 8 or 10. They moved to Egypt for his development, so for his spiritual rite of passage as a young man. And I got to see the place where they lived and hid out from the Christians, the Romans at the time. And it was amazing. And it's still, the walls were vibrating with this energy of Jesus. I'll never forget it. And I was humbled. At that point, I was crying. And they were like, see, you listen. Yes, I listened. Wow. It was a moment of humility, I can tell you that. And then we went around to the hanging church. And the hanging church is called that because it's Mary's church. It's a church, Mother Mary. I actually think it's Mary Magdalene, but they changed it. Can't imagine that happening, can you? It was just a feeling that I had. And this church was fully Coptic, so the original Christianity. And you could tell by all the architecture, it was very, 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 very old. My goodness. You know, it kept immaculately. And then as I was gathering, we went through, it was an hour. We sat there and we listened to every detail of my Egyptologist. He knew all about the ins and outs of this Coptic church, the way it was built, why it was built, all of the columns, all of the herringbone patterns that in mother of pearl. Like, it was amazing. And then I was like just totally in awe of him and his knowledge, because he's amazing. And then the whole region that we were in, and I ended up being just so overawed and touched by what happened. Tears rolling down my face. God saying, "Now do you believe?" And I said, "Yes, now I believe." And walked out, went to grab my group, and they went ahead of me, and I felt this hand on my back. And I turned around and there was nobody there. And I just broke down in tears. The girls came around me and hugged me and held me and wanted to know what happened. I explained, and they were like, "This has been the most amazing day ever." And that turned me back. This round, that turned me back to my faith. So from 2016 onwards, I never, not for a moment, stopped believing that Jesus was real. I saw where he lived, and I felt the energy of where he lived. It was amazing. A lot of people are looking for that thing that's going to get them to 5D. They're looking for that bolt of lightning, or that next big thing, or that amazing diet, or that incredible tool. You know, they're going to spend thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on, there was a recommendation on my phone, expand your consciousness, which it probably can with this music selection free, and it probably could, but actually, ultimately, nothing will expand your consciousness. Nothing expands your awakening. Nothing. You can spend any number of thousands of dollars on any number of subscriptions or tools that you think are going to help. And I guess I'm just here to tell you that really the fast track to everything that makes it all good again is God and God's word. Wherever you find God's word. You know, for me, I started moving around, and my difficulty with the Bible, I went straight into his words. It was quotes that did. I love quotes, so I love poetry, I love prose, and I love beautifully written passages. So things like Rumi and Hafiz and Shams and all of that, I love it. And then I realized, okay, maybe if I just go to God's word through the quotes, through an app, maybe there's an app that can help me. And sure enough, there were some apps, and I set those every day, and they are amazing, and they have helped me tremendously because I bypassed any resistance that I had to the Bible that way. I did gematria, as you know. If you've been following me for a while, you know I love gematria. The thing that really got me close was the numbers, and learning that numbers are God's way of bringing you closer, God's way of bringing you into alignment with his truth and his knowing. I was a child that was raised and terrified of numbers, absolutely vomiting, anxious, couldn't deal with it at all, not in the slightest. Numbers and me, dropped maths at age 13, psychologically couldn't deal with it. It was too big and didn't understand maths, couldn't get it. That's how bad it was. And here am I now, being able to share a lot about numerology and decoding numbers and comms from the military through the numbers. Like, it's pretty crazy. And I felt God through that. In addition, when we look at the gematria, and I've spoken about gematria before, if you look at a few, quite a few, maybe 3 or 4 lives ago, where I spoke about gematria, how I do it, you know, no rules, it's just how I did it. And we're leaning into the gematria. By leaning into the gematria and the numbers, I just naturally started to look for God's words more. And that's when it was gematria that threw me in. So we can thank gematria for that, because I could feel God's love through the gematria. I also feel God's wrath, let me tell you. He's ticked. He's really ticked, upset and angry, but loving towards us, towards the children of God. He is doing what he does because he wants us all to meet him in his kingdom. So I just wanted to share that with you, that if you're looking for that fast lane express, well, God's the way. Jesus is the only way, through Jesus's love and remembering that Jesus died for us. That's what makes us special. If we believe that, then everything opens up. Until we believe that, there's not much that can be done. So you might be thinking, well, I already do this. I already lean on the word of God, but I'm not feeling much. Lean in some more. Okay? Well, find ways to get those words into you without the doctrine, without the religious framework, because we actually don't really need it, without the ritualistic approach to learning. You know, I had a discussion with someone the other day, and they said to me, well, you know, I'm just grateful that at least I had a religious upbringing. Bless them. And I'm sure you've said this too. At least I had a religious upbringing, and therefore it's easier for me. And I actually said, well, kudos to you, because it's harder to break through some of that conditioning and still come up trumps, no pun intended. I'm going to go. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that's been helpful. I hope that you're able to share this with others. Understand what I'm on about and why I speak about the way that I do. Fully believe that we're all part of God's kingdom, and I really firmly believe that this is what's happening right now. What's written in the Bible is written for right now. If you like what I'm doing, like it, share it amongst friends, and set your notifications. Going to be doing some beautiful work in coming weeks. This will be going to be some gorgeous workshops on the Bible and essential oils, that's my two passions. There we go, right there. Spirituality and essential oils from home. There will be some sessions that are there. If you want to sign up for my emails, go ahead and do that. You'll be hearing from me from email, and time to time you'll be seeing me in all the various places. All right, so much love. I hope that you've enjoyed that, and look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks for spending time with me, and